Hey, Nick, you're on mute.
Yep, just chatting with my wife here. How's everyone doing today? So before we dive in here, I'd love to hear like a list of questions of what people hope to get out of our class today. There's kind of a power move that I learned from Erin Duckworth, where she starts every meeting by asking the question, what did you hope to achieve in today's meeting, and what can I do to provide you with value? And I've learned through trial and error that those are very relevant questions I should be asking before I start any class that I teach, because people often walk in with very different ideas and different kind of knowledge levels or things they're hoping to get. Sometimes people are kind of working on a specific issue, and it can be a valuable kind of teaching point to talk through whatever problem they're working on. And so I just love to see what people are kind of walking in with here.
I would like to know how to write a stronger offer, verbiage, like if you have like a well or septic issues or, things like that, I guess, or inspections, like how to verbally write that in there. I always feel like it's kind of generic, contingent on, like water tests, just sewer, septic, or whatever, being in compliance. Or being brought up to code. I just don't really feel like that's appropriate. I feel like it should be a little bit stronger than that, especially like inspection, or if we should, like maybe if you are thinking there's some structural issues or something like that, do you write that in there or whatever? Just a vague inspection contingency. I mean, just that's kind of what I'm hoping to find out some more on. That's it.
Awesome. Excellent questions. What other questions?
Mine is even though it's a seller's market, I noticed with one of my buyers, we went into a couple of offers, and we were always they would always go with somebody else. Why they would choose that, I don't know. It's because she had Minnesota housing. How can I make an offer stronger if I do have another Minnesota housing offer? You know what I mean? Sometimes it would be little things that we would be asking. And I know with Minnesota housing, they're very strict with no wiring showing or anything like that. But under the circumstances, it's like we were me personally feeling defeated. Like after our sixth offer, I'm like, okay, what gives? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like you said, Stephanie, am I supposed to word it different? Is there a specific way that I'm doing something wrong? I know it's my first year, but after like the third, fourth, you're like, okay, I must be doing something wrong. But finally, we're doing a closing tomorrow. So she actually got in the first offer, and they actually accepted her offer. But under the circumstances, to the point where we got, I noticed, I feel like you said, Stephanie, do a stronger offer under the circumstances. How do you word it better instead of just contingent on an inspection?
Excellent questions. We're gonna dig into that for sure. Anyone else? What kind of challenges are you having day to day? What did you hope to get out of this class? What can I do to provide you with value today? Caleb, Melanie, Carla. Otherwise, it's just going to be Stephanie and Estella's show here. All right, I guess it is. Oh, go ahead.
I guess for me, I'm pretty brand new, so for me, it's just the beginning basics. I haven't, done any listing agreements or offers, so me, it's just pretty much basic training.
Okay. There's a recording of a purchase agreement walkthrough. I'll see if I can dig that up for you. If you go to the Keller Williams Facebook group and go to the units page, okay, there's some really outstanding classes where they literally just walk through line by line in the purchase agreement. Okay. And I would strongly recommend that. The classes really don't teach you much in terms of how to write a purchase agreement the way you should. So like on my team, the agents on my team, I have like a template in Instinet that they're somewhat required to follow, where all the kind of default boxes are checked, and if something strays from that default, they escalate it to me. That typically goes with a team, though. Out of the box, you get the Instinet templates where everything's pretty blank. And I think at a minimum, you want to see kind of a template walkthrough of some kind. And so there's some excellent classes. You just go to the Keller Williams Facebook page, the Facebook group rather, and you go to units, and there's recordings of classes there. And I would absolutely go through there. I'm guessing Kelly Domail probably has one on there. She knows the minutia of contracts, the Minnesota contracts, far better than I do. I'm not the most detail-oriented person, and so I would strongly recommend checking that out. This might be a purchase agreement 102 class and not a 101 class, but I promise you're going to get a lot of value out of this class.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Caleb, I see you're on video.
Yeah.
What you got?
I'm just gonna follow along and listen to you guys. I don't have any specific questions at the moment.
Okay. Where are you at in your real estate career?
I'm very new. I'm not very experienced, but I also have another full-time job, so this is just on a part-time basis for me currently.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear that. I think that's where it starts. So I got my license in 2017, January 2018 or something like that. So I actually have not had my license that long. I did it, as a second job for a year. And then I went full-time as of June of 2019. And I had, 160,000 in GCI last year, with, half that year being a side job. So I think it can very easily be a side job for a year, for 10 years, for a lifetime, or it can easily transition into a full-time job. Keep in mind that I do have about 10 years of experience in real estate investment, and only recently got my license. So I definitely have a head start there compared to most agents. But it started out as a side job, and it's absolutely phenomenal there. Have you written a purchase agreement before, Caleb?
Well, yeah, that was more of a personal, but yeah, I have only 2 transactions so far. So
that's awesome. The hardest one's the first, man. Gets way easier from there. I bet the second one was a lot easier than the first.
Yeah. So.
Awesome. Melanie, did you have any thoughts you wanted to share?
I'm just looking to get some starter information. I mean, I'm just brand new here, so.
Awesome. Okay. So I put a link into the Zoom chat on a negotiation class that I teach. That's part 1. Looking for a link to the part 2 class. I'm not immediately seeing it. And I'm going to jump into a slide pretty deep in that slide deck to talk about. So that's kind of a deep, class on just negotiations from a high level perspective about how every aspect of our life is a process of influencing people and communicating with people and working with people. And I think that negotiation at its apex is the art of serving, the art of creating value, the art of finding opportunities to create, win-win deals. A lot of people have kind of like a negative connotation, I think, with negotiation. And I think that's a little bit different worldview than mine anyway. But to look at negotiations in real estate offers, in purchase agreements, because I think that's something that needs to be taught a little more aggressively here. Now, please keep in mind that my opinions do not constitute the opinions of Keller Williams or anything like that. You may or may not want to do the things I do. And the things I do are very different. The way the Black Swan Real Estate team does deals is very different from what you might see elsewhere. So just keep that in mind, that you may find this to be from what you've heard. So let's see, how do you write stronger offers? Estella, you said you've been through half a dozen lost offers so far. Is that right? Estella, you said that you've written like 6 offers and that haven't been accepted now.
That is correct. They were actually, you write one and then it was contingent about its inspection.
Mm-hmm.
And then it actually fell through, and then we wrote another offer, and then they went with a different person instead. So it's pretty much, but thankfully, my buyer already is finally going to close. So, but like
Awesome.
you said, the first one is the one that it's like you don't know where to fill out and everything, or the questions, and that's where you go to the team of Keller Williams, and everybody will help you out and ask questions and stuff.
Absolutely.
And that's what everybody was really helpful with.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Let me ask you this. Do you call the listing agent before you submit your offer?
I did. I actually learned
Okay.
that from you.
Awesome.
From
Were you
one
in
of
the
your
negotiation
classes.
class?
I was
Okay.
in one of your classes, and I did call them and everything. And it was actually kind of nice, but it was kind of nerve wracking asking, because on one of them, she was a colleague of ours there at Keller Williams. And it turns out that she's like, well, I can't really release so much information under the circumstances. So it's like, what do you ask? What don't you ask? So like you said, you got to just feel how the other agent is and beneficial to your client and their client. So, and working
Absolutely.
from there. So yeah, so it was helpful for being one of your classes.
Absolutely, yeah. So I had a listing here a couple months ago, and we listed it. In the first 48 hours, we got 3 offers, and I kind of leveraged one offer into another to get better offers. And at the end of the process, so there was one offer that had an escalator up to like 10,000 over asking. There was another offer that was a little bit above asking, and another offer that was a little bit above asking. All of them had inspection contingencies. By the end of the negotiation process, all of them had waived inspection contingency. And we ended up going with the offer that was a lower amount, that was, kind of pound for pound similar to another offer. And the reason for that is because one of those offers had an offer letter accompanying it. I don't know if you're doing an offer letter, Estella.
Well, with this one, we are now, because of last minute issues. I had to get my lender to write to the other agent that my buyer was in good faith, that she was ready to close, but it wasn't our fault.
Not a pre-approval letter.
Or what do you mean?
You must have a pre-approval letter.
No,
Sure.
Besides that, we had the pre-approval letter, but under circumstances, for some reason or another, we had to change the closing till Friday instead of being yesterday. So we had to write a letter saying that my buyer was good to go. It was on the fault of the lender, not necessarily the buyer. And that's where, even though the seller had already signed, correct me if I'm wrong, is that what you're referring to, like a letter of good faith on behalf of your buyer from the lender, besides the pre-approval letter? Or what letter are you consisting of?
No, I'm talking about something different. My computer's struggling a little bit here. I don't know why.
Okay.
Let's see what's going on here if I can. Yeah, I don't know why I was struggling there for a second. So I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So here is a client that we closed with recently. I thought I had an offer letter here. Let's see.
And is that offer letter from your client?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. That's a first. That's actually good.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of tricks in my bag here. I'm going to stop my screen share for 1 second and find this offer letter. This is hopefully valuable to everyone to see. I hope this isn't just a long tangent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to reshare my screen. All right, so what I do is I have my buyers, if we think it's going to be competitive, which it pretty much always is these days, I'll have a Google Doc or a Word doc, and I'll have the buyer phrase a letter like this, and then I'll help them wordsmith it. This is a letter from the buyer to the seller. I'm going to preface this by saying that the National Association of Realtors considers offer letters to be a worst practice. And the reason for that is that they can easily be discriminatory in nature. Does that make sense? You would never want your client, for example, to include a photo in the letter because they might see the color of the person's skin or nationality or whatever, and the sellers might potentially discriminate against that buyer or discriminate in their favor for those discriminatory reasons. And you want to make sure that you scrub their letter for any potentially discriminatory language. So you would want to excise any references to you know, a church that they're affiliated with or anything. Also, you know, family size, whatever. It needs to be a personal, friendly letter. I recommend a handwritten letter that you then scan or do a cell phone photo of, but something like this is also optimal. I also have my sellers draft a letter for all my listings. Now, again, the NAR considers letters to be a worse practice because they potentially create an opportunity for discrimination. But I think that that guidance exists, speaks to the unbelievable power of this tool. Does that make sense? This is a tool so powerful that it is not recommended for general practice. So this particular letter here, this was a Kutzke Park house. So it was on the market for 1 hour before I got in it. It didn't even have a lockbox on it. My client had a finance offer, and we were up against a cash offer from an investor at a higher price than ours, and we prevailed. We took a knife to a gunfight, and we prevailed. How did we do that? Anyone else?
I think by the buyer actually showing a little bit about themselves to the seller, what the other buyers don't know, what the seller doesn't know of any other buyer. So he knew a little bit of where they were coming from.
That's right. That's exactly right. I never quite finished my story with my listing. You know, the reason why we chose the offer we did is because they did include an offer letter. And so the seller had some kind of notion of relationship with that buyer. And also I had a relationship with the agent. It was another member at Keller Williams who was on the ALC with me. And so I knew that they would close. In fact, their office is right next to mine. They're well within strangling distance if there was an issue there. And so apples to apples, the offer where there's a relationship between the agents and the offer where there's a relationship between the buyer and seller is the offer which will prevail. As usually the offers are pretty close to each other. Like, you know, let's say you're selling a home for, in this case, you know, $275,000, and an offer comes in at, you know, $10,000 over or whatever. $10,000 is a lot of money, but the seller here in Kutzke Park is getting multiple cash offers from investors who plan to knock their house down, right? And I, of course, gave a little bit of guidance to our buyer here. And you can see in the last little block of text there, in an effort to compete as a single income individual in a market overwhelmed with cash buyers, investors, and developers, I'm pre-approved, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a person who's struggling here and I could use your help. I'm a person who's going to love this home. I love all the unique architectural details, the telephone cubby. I've got a dog. The dog is not a protected class. You can talk about pets all you want. I've never met someone who doesn't like dogs. So this is a powerful tool that can win the deal. You just need to be careful because it is so powerful that it can potentially, with great power comes great responsibility. So so an offer letter is a very powerful tool indeed. And
Oh, excuse me, sorry. I actually wrote a offer letter for the house I just currently bought, and there was a lot of offers, and because of the letter, we got the house, and that just happened a week ago. So I definitely agree with the offer letter.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, I know my agent told me to write one up, and it helped us, and so I agree with you.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you lending me some credibility there. Who was your agent, out of curiosity?
I was Angie Burge.
Awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they will never teach you any of this stuff because it's technically a worst practice according to the NAR. And I'm probably the only ALC member, master faculty, whatever, foolish enough to teach this, because you might say, "Oh, Nick said I should go write offer letters on all my offers," and so someone might talk to me about that. Just remember that you do need to scrub these letters. You do need to make sure that they don't contain any discriminatory language. I would certainly recommend not including a photo, and be very careful about them, but they are extremely powerful. So that's the buyer to seller relationship. let's go back to the agent-agent relationship. So Estella talked about some of the nervousness about making the call. Whenever you write an offer, if you want that offer to prevail, you must have a relationship with the agent. I recommend building relationships proactively with as many agents as possible. This is a relationship business. 90% of transactions are done by 10% of the agents. And there's a reason for that, because this is a relationship business. So it's a cumulative advantage. The more relationships you have, they exponentially multiply to create a tremendous advantage for agents who are established or agents who are willing to do the work of proactively building those relationships. What does that mean? That means taking agents out to lunch. So last fall, before COVID, I had a goal of going out for coffee or lunch with one agent every weekday. That's not advice I've ever heard in Ignite or anything like that. So I might, write an offer on a property and realize that I've never met this agent face to face before, and say, hey, I've never met you before. I'm a newer agent. Would you like to go get coffee sometime and chat? And this does not need to be a protracted meeting. It could be a 15-minute meeting. Coffee can be a lot better than lunch in that way. It can be a more brief encounter, and just talk about ways that you can provide each other with value. You want to make sure that you have a reason to be top of mind. You want to have an ask. You want to make sure that they remember you. People do not remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel. So you want to compliment them easily, ask them for advice, inquire about kind of their goals and their dreams, and then be done, and then wrap it up. And if you take a look at what agents are, those 10% of agents doing 90% of transactions, it's a short list. And it does not take long to develop a personal relationship with those agents. I would say probably at least half of the transactions that I write offers on, I have a personal relationship with that listing agent. At least half, I would say. And in fact, when I go look at a listing that I might shop with a buyer of mine, the first thing I look at is like the location and price and so forth. The second thing I look at is who is the listing agent, because certain listing agents have certain patterns of behavior. So for example, I could rattle off the names of myriad agents where I know that their marketing strategy is that they will, list a home high and then let it sit on the market for a while, and they'll slowly reduce the price. They do not aggressively control their clients and rein in their pricing expectations, or they promise them the moon and the stars to win the listing and then kind of scale the price back from there. That's the strategy that I think is not a good strategy for anyone. And so I'm much less inclined to do showings on those listings, because I know that they're not good listings. They're not priced appropriately. And there's other agents where they're just plain hard to work with, and you want to figure out who those agents are, and you don't want your clients writing offers on their listings. Probably there are agents who have cussed me out for no good reason, just because they are in a bad mood, and I don't really like working with those agents. And so I generally don't show my clients their listings, because this is not a selfish thing, by the way. People can cuss me out if they want to. I am happy to go toe to toe for my clients, but I know that my clients get bad outcomes when we're working with these agents. Then there's the other side of the spectrum. There are agents where I have alerts set up for them because their listings are all so good and all their listings are priced well, and they've managed the expectations of their clients and lead that relationship, that I want to sell any home that they are listing because they're just so awesome to work with. And this is the power of agent relationships. And when they see an offer come in from me, what's the first thing that someone sees when that offer comes in? So you're sitting there, you're in your email, right? Your offer comes in via email. So what's the first thing you see when the offer comes in?
Who actually is sent it? What agent is sending it?
That's right. That's your first impression. It's not the amount. It's not even, it's the person sending the offer. The messenger is everything. That's right.
Who you're going to be working with in reality.
That's right. That's right. And so you want them to have, again, people don't remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel. And I hope that whenever my number pops up on their phone, when I call them, I hope that whenever my offer shows up in their inbox, that, oh, it's Nick. I wonder, he must have an offer for me. Nick always writes good offers and represents strong clients. I bet it's a good offer. I'm really excited to open this offer. Do you think that agent drags their feet in presenting that offer to their client to maybe give some other offers a chance to come in the door? Do you think that agent just forwards the email that comes from me, or do you think they call their client and say, hey, we got this offer in, I've worked with this agent, many times before, he always represents strong buyers, I really love working with this agent, I think we should give this offer strong consideration? It's a
And then
radical
again,
difference.
that's the referral from you, the repertoire that you have with that agent, that gives you a little extra niche than everybody else.
That's right. And
I kind of
no one
felt that. It's funny you say that, because I felt that with the agent that I'm working with now. It's like you at the end of the day, it's like you're on first name basis now. And as soon as anything happens, I felt like that communication, even though it was my first buy, I felt that with the other agent, just calling, keeping in touch, and anything went wrong, just communicating with any changes that was going on. So I can see where you're coming from. Totally.
That's right. And there's multiple levels to this game. So that listing that I had, so the reason ALC exists is a very transparent thing. It's a networking opportunity. So the top agents and the brokerages are invited to participate, and then they have a leadership role in policy changes and stuff in the brokerage. But ultimately, once a month, all the top agents get together in a room, and we just say, what do we want, and what do we need, and what do we have to offer? It's a very aggressive and deliberate marketing opportunity. And successful agents are deliberate about networking. And that offer that came in on my listing, I solicited that offer. I said, hey, I've got this listing coming soon. Does anyone have a buyer that might be a good fit for this listing? And ultimately, the agent that wrote the offer that was chosen was the agent who was in ALC, who heard about that property before it even hit the market. And agents call me all the time, and because I make sure they know that I'm the person who, if you have a distressed home, you need a fast close, an all cash close, no contingencies, I'm the guy to call. If you have an affordable home, just pretty much anything under 200,000, there's a good chance that I want to buy that home, or one of the clients that I represent buy that home, because I principally represent investors. I don't do as much retail business. I do a ton of investment business. And so when people see that, because I have deliberately marketed myself and fought to stay top of mind as that niche in the market, people call me before things even hit the market. And this is all not just legal, but this is an alignment of interest, because you can put a home on the market and get all kinds of garbage offers that aren't going to close on properties like these. And oftentimes I get the call not before the property hits the market, but after the property's hit the market, gone under contract, and that contract is about to fall through. I got that call last week, and they said, Nick, I don't know what happened here. It got bid up. I knew that there's no way this home was actually going to close at this price. This is a crazy price. Is there any way that you can save this transaction? Because I'm representing them on the buy side after this home sells, and there's just no way this buyer is going to close. We're under contract, and the seller accepted the offer, but I told them it wasn't going to close, and right now it's impossible. There's no way this is going to close. So there's no limit to the depth of the relationship game. At the end of the day, your offer does need to be a strong offer, right? Like you need to have a pre-approval letter. You need to have a strong pre-approval letter. You need to be working with lenders who are respected in our community, just the same as listing agents have a relationship with you. They have a relationship with the lenders. They know the lenders that write pre-approval letters that are garbage, and they know the lenders that write pre-approval letters that close every time. And you need to be very careful about who is representing your client on the lending side and how that is being presented to the listing agent. You need to make sure that the offer itself is strong, and you need to make sure that offer comes quickly. You need to set expectations with your client and make sure that you're getting to listings as soon as they hit the market, unless you're looking at older listings, and getting the best deal is not as important to you. Some clients prefer to have more time to think about it and are okay with paying a premium or buying a property that other people have passed over. Getting an offer through with an inspection contingency right now is a pretty huge challenge. Very few offers that I write for my retail clients contain an inspection contingency. None of the offers that I write for myself or my investor clients ever contain an inspection contingency. It's not feasible to get an offer accepted at this time with an inspection contingency.
But isn't that as an agent? excuse me that I'm interrupting. Isn't
No,
that as
please.
an agent how you look? I was told that you always want to do a contingency upon inspection. But I've noticed also on some of them, some of the buyers would not want an inspection. And I'm like, but as an agent, as being a new one, isn't that how you as an agent protect your buyer
Yeah, great question.
regarding,
Yeah.
I mean, that at least that's what I've known, but how do you go about around that if that's the case? Like if a lot of people are contingent regarding a purchase agreement and it doesn't go through because of the inspection, so you have other people over here saying, oh, we'll decline the inspection. How do you go about reassuring your buyer that they're getting something that is in the future not going to be defective or something like that, and it comes back and bites you in the ass?
Yeah. So let's say that this is the PA class 103 now. Now that I've talked about offer letters, which is kind of a risky topic for me to teach on, and I hope that I have spoken very deliberately to the fact that offer letters are considered to be a worse practice because they are so powerful. Let's talk about inspection contingencies because it's a similar situation. So as an agent, you should always advise your client to get an inspection to maximize their protection. But I also advise my clients that in this climate, I mean, I don't know if you saw the move of the market stats, but inventory is down 33% year over year for the month of June. That's crazy. Like usually those numbers are moving 2 or 3%, 5% tops, 33%. To say this is a seller's market is, I don't know what phrase could capture, that in a sufficient way. It is an on fire market. And you have to consider also that at least half the inventory on the MLS at any given time basically has no chance of selling, right? Like it's just garbage that is hopelessly overpriced, is in a terrible location, is distressed and the sellers don't realize it. So only about half the inventory on the MLS even has a chance of selling. So a 33% move in inventory is really like a 66% move in inventory. So like two-thirds of the homes that are usually on the market are gone. The homes that people actually want to buy that, are retail ready, move-in ready homes that are in a neighborhood that people want to live in, that sort of thing. So it's going to be hard to represent a buyer in this climate and to get a property under contract with an inspection contingency. One thing to keep in mind, so I've seen a lot of inspection reports, a whole lot of inspection reports. It has been extremely rare for me to ever see an inspection report that identifies something that's like a frank surprise. It has happened. The most common one is a roof. And that's going to be, let's say, like a $7,000 expense. And a good inspector during the summer is going to get up on the roof and say, oh, it looks like there's hail damage and this roof is worn, or it looks like there's, some issues with the foundation. We probably need to get something looking at that. There are some very significant, potential issues to look at there. Though 95 to 99% of the inspection reports that I look at, there's going to be, I don't know, let's say 50 findings on there, which amount to less than $2,000 in repairs. Just a myriad of trivial issues. And so as an investor, I mean, I have a keener eye than many agents probably. I have a background as an engineer. I am not a residential property inspector. I'm not trained as one. I'm not licensed. I'm not a member of the association. And I absolutely advise my clients of that. But I mean, I take a close look at the property, and if I see something that is concerning to me, I'll advise them on that. Another thing is, if you're looking at a property that's 100 years old, like a Kutzke Park house or something like that, you probably want an inspection on that because there's just so many more opportunities for there to be an issue. Whereas if you're looking at a 2010 build that's changed hands twice in the last 10 years, they probably had an inspection when it changed hands 3 or 4 years ago, appears to be in outstanding condition. There's just not much that can be wrong with that house. There really isn't.
Isn't that where it falls, where you're going to love the house 80% and like 15% you're going to have to fix yourself, put a little touch to it, regarding inspection? Like say the window needs a replacement or something, regarding like the inspection, so they could waive it if you know what it's not no material fact or anything like that that's gonna make or break the offer. But like you said, maybe just the roof, how old is the roof or something like that. Because on some of them where we did do offers, I noticed that we could have done without the inspection. And I had a gut feeling the other ones did go because they were waiving the inspection. And like you
That's
said,
right.
if it's a 2010 and they've been living there, the sellers were there for 10 years, you don't have any defects or anything like that. So then what is the point? So might as well
Right.
do it. But like I said, like you said, you always go with the contingency inspection, but you don't want, how do you protect your client? So that's why I'm like, just go with the inspection, go with the inspection. So that's why
It's
I
always a
feel
good
like I
idea.
lost them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's always a good idea to include an inspection contingency.
Yeah.
Let's be clear, there's two pieces here. There's an inspection, and then there's an
Mhm.
inspection contingency. The two almost always accompany each other. Sometimes I write unusual offers where there is an inspection but no inspection contingency. And so the buyer would potentially lose their earnest money if an inspection was performed and they were unhappy with some of the findings of the inspection. And the listing agent may look at you a little bit sideways when they see that come in, if they even catch it at all. If you don't point it out to them, they probably won't even notice the fact that there's an inspection without an inspection contingency, or they may not understand what that means. You'll have to explain it to them. So I don't recommend that strategy unless you are prepared to manage those expectations appropriately. That's something that I do, but I consider that to be kind of an advanced strategy.
Okay.
And I will only do it if it's an agent that I have a relationship with, that's a sophisticated agent that understands exactly what we're doing here.
And you have a relationship with them, you know how they work.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. Yep. I would say that it is basically you would waive the inspection contingency and you would waive the inspection if you were trying to strengthen your offer as much as possible. You don't want to make it any more complicated than that. But you always want to advise your client that getting an inspection is best practice in normal market conditions. Like almost every offer has an inspection, but with as competitive as the market is, it is hard to get an offer to be accepted that does not have an inspection contingency. So that's a choice that your client can make. And what I do is I tell them exactly what I just told you, which is that some small percentage of the time, an inspection will reveal some significant material fact, almost always the roof. There's been like a couple of occasions when anything has ever been found that's a material issue other than the roof. And I've only run into an issue with the roof a few times. Otherwise, the inspections rarely reveal anything terribly revelatory. And so if you want to get a house in this market, like it's a decision that your buyer has to make, and you need to advise them to get an inspection that is the best practice, but also advise them that it can be really hard to get an offer accepted. So for me as a listing agent, I would value an inspection on like a median price home, let's say a $250,000 home, at about $10,000. So if I have one offer that comes in at $250,000 with no inspection contingency, and an offer that comes in at $260,000 with an inspection contingency, I would advise my client to take the offer at $250,000 because it's a piece of complexity. It's an opportunity for the contract to fall through. The price almost always goes down after the inspection report comes back, or they ask my client to make some sort of repairs that may or may not be reasonable. And then most importantly, it's a piece of massive negotiation leverage where, let's say the inspection report comes back and it says that the seals are deteriorated on several windows, and it amounts to this actually happened. This actually happened to me 2 weeks ago. So I had a listing, offer came in with an inspection contingency. It was the only offer we got, so we took it. They did an inspection. We had the home pre-inspected, and on the pre-inspection report it said that the windows have deteriorated seals, but none of them are like fogged up. They're all operational. Cosmetically, they don't look great because like the window sills and frames and stuff are kind of yucky looking. It said it on the pre-inspection report. The inspection report comes back and it says windows have deteriorated seals, and they say, okay, well, we want a several $1,000 concession for this. And we're like, here, it was already a revealed material fact. Windows are functional. This is cosmetic. You may need to replace them sometime in the next 10 years. They're like, no, we want to proactively replace them. And I'm like, nope, you're not going to do that. And they're like, well, we have an inspection contingency and we can drop out if we want. And that's where that leverage comes in, because if the home goes under inspection contingency and then falls out of inspection contingency, your listing is now branded. Everyone is going to look at that listing suspiciously. It doesn't matter how rational the reason why was. And so as soon as you, as a listing agent, as soon as you accept an offer that has an inspection contingency, in a strange sort of way, you have forfeited massive leverage to the buyer. And there are sophisticated buyers out there and buyer's agents that I try not to accept their offers, but they are ruthless in leveraging that advantage. So they'll get you under contract at 260, and they'll try and get you down to like 245 by the time you're done with the inspection contingency period. And they'll have to extend the inspection contingency period and do further inspections with contractors and get bids. And okay, you have to replace every window in the house. And yeah, the roof isn't deteriorated, but the boots aren't looking good, and we need to patch the roof here, and the exterior siding is deteriorated. Well, you could see the exterior siding was deteriorated. This is not a new discovery. So as a listing agent, I would say on a median price home, an inspection contingency is worth about 10 grand. And it's rare, in my opinion. Like even if you miss a roof, it's not going to be 10 grand. It's going to be 7, like 8 grand tops. So in this market, like financially, if you get a house with an inspection contingency in it, you're almost always paying a premium one way or another, right? It's a multiple offer scenario, and you have a higher number than someone else, and that's the only reason you get it is because you paid more. Then you have to pay for the inspection itself, which isn't a lot of money, and normally is like a very good return on investment. But I would rather just pay less for the home and accept whatever risk is involved, and use that discount to make whatever repairs I discover are necessary over the next several years. Is kind of my attitude on it. Now, again, this is a dangerous thing for me to teach on, because now one of you all might go tell your clients, hey, Nick said that we never need to get inspections, and inspections are terrible. No, inspections are great. It's the best practice. You should always get an inspection. But in the current market, as an investor, I never get an inspection. I don't feel like it's valuable or necessary for me as an investor. My investor clients rarely get inspections. My retail clients, I encourage them to get inspections, but these days they almost never get inspections because they just can't get it through. We can't get an offer accepted that has an inspection contingency. So
pretty much
so that's
tell
a very
your buyer. So pretty much tell your buyer, this is the scenario where we're at. It's a hot market. It's going to sell right away. We can walk through it. And if it's in a good year, then let them choose and let them have the option. That way it doesn't fall back on you. Okay.
That's exactly right. Yep.
So I've been told by a banker that I should always have a financing contingency.
That's right. Yes, you should.
Every time.
And what is that? I've never heard of a finance contingency, if I may ask.
So whenever I write
sure.
an offer, I always say that it's contingent on financing. And then I lead into the rest of what else is contingent on, so that you always have a back door. But that's kind of like been bad too sometimes, because I have had people that wanted to back out on an offer, and we had it contingent on financing, but their banker wouldn't give them the satisfaction of the, like writing something that says you are not financed, you can't get financed or whatever, because she's like, it's a lie, because you can. So I don't really know.
Right. So we're 45 minutes in. I could speak probably for an hour to what you just discussed there. Spiritually, something that I think is important to think about or consider is it's important to protect your buyer, to have opportunities to back out, right? But you never want to get into a transaction where that's the mindset, right? Everyone here on this call, we are closers, yes? And one of the most important aspects of your reputation as an agent is whether or not you close. There are some agents who I would say have a reputation for writing weak offers. Like back in the day when it was not an on-fire seller's market, it was not uncommon for someone to write an offer on a property without a pre-approval letter, which seems crazy to me. and something like 50% of transactions in the U.S. That are facilitated by realtors close with no buyer's rep agreement. Crazy, truly crazy. That buyer's agent has no protection whatsoever. An agent who does not have an exclusive right to represent the buyer is certainly not well incentivized to close. And a buyer who does not have a pre-approval letter is not super incentivized to close. And a buyer's agent, like, you want to protect your buyer, but ultimately you want to help that buyer close. And you want every agent in town to know that you are someone who closes. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how. And it is extremely rare for myself or anyone on my team to ever have a closing that falls through, for us to need to exercise a financing contingency or an inspection contingency or to cancel a PA for any reason. It does happen, but it's rare, and it's almost always because the other party gives up. And there's ways to protect yourself here. So as I said, people used to write offers without pre-approval letters. Crazy. Agents, it used to be a common strategy, we'll call it, to take your buyer shopping with no representation agreement, no pre-approval letter, literally no means whatsoever to write an offer, no preparation or capability to write an offer, and to kind of get your buyer to like fall in love with a house, and then get them, you know, in love with the idea of buying a house, and then you take them to a lender to get them a loan, and then, you know, you do this while you're already under contract, and you have all sorts of contingencies and stuff. People used to use the inspection contingency period as an opportunity to go get their buyer financing. And I think that does you a huge disservice, first of all, because you don't get paid unless they close. And all this time that you're spent taking people to fall in love with homes that they can't actually buy is doing them a huge disservice as well. So it's wasting your time. And then so let's say they go look at a house and they seem like strong buyers and you don't need a pre-approval letter and whatever. They love this house at $350,000 and their pre-approval comes back at $330,000. And that's the absolute max they're going to get. And this seller, you know, it's well priced at $350,000 and they know it, and they're not going to come down on price. You can write a buyer letter and try and get that offer through any way you can, but ultimately, they just can't go any lower than that, and your buyer can't go any higher than that. And I promise you, every house you show them for the rest of your relationship with them is going to be unsatisfactory to them. They may want to buy a house, but they're not going to love it the way they love that first house, the one they couldn't get. And what matters in life? What matters? Objective reality, whether it's like 72 degrees in this room, or how we perceive reality. It's hot in this room or it's cold in this room. What truly matters in life?
The buyer's perception.
Perception, that's right. Our perception is reality. And you can go get them a gorgeous home for $330,000. But if it's not the $350,000 home, the one they couldn't get, they're never going to love it. And they may want to exercise those contingencies to get out of the contract because consciously or subconsciously, they're still angry that you showed them a house that they couldn't get, even if that's what they told you to do, right? So spiritually, I want us to all be on the same page that we are closers, that we only represent buyers who close, that we aren't looking for opportunities to get out of a purchase agreement, and we don't get into that purchase agreement unless we are totally set on crossing the finish line, even if that means potentially not writing an offer or losing an opportunity for a sale, because we value our reputation and our time so much more than some shaky commission that we could chase. And so a lot of buyers representatives, I think, you know, they want to aggressively represent their client, and I certainly do. I took my financed client to an all cash, listing and prevailed. I think that I am winning for my clients in places and ways that no other agent in town is. But I do that by making sure that we always close. And so when listing agents see my offer come in, they see Nick Stoggeberg, they think this is an offer that's going to close. You know, maybe we don't need to get top dollar on this, or, you know, maybe we are okay with an inspection contingency on this one because I know that Nick's not going to rake me over the coals on some, sockets that need to be updated or something like that. And I know that he's not going to ask for some crazy adjustment because he controls the expectations of his buyers and doesn't try and leverage the inspection contingency against me. And I know that the clients that Nick represents, they have rock solid pre-approval offers. They're not bogus pre-approval letters that haven't verified income and haven't done a credit pull. I know that Nick represents buyers where even if their financing fell through, he's going to have a plan B and a plan C, and he's going to close. And so spiritually, I think that's something that really I can't emphasize enough. And it matters in the way that you write your purchase agreement. And it's easy to kind of live in a totally separate universe than the universe I live in, where you say, I want to get my client into this deal with maximum optionality to get out of this deal any way that I can. And I think that is valuable. I think the optionality is invaluable to have for your client. I can tell you that I've canceled PAs with no contingencies whatsoever and gotten my client's money back because the listing agent knows that we did everything in our power to try to get across the finish line, and ultimately it just wasn't going to happen. And it's actually pretty rare for clients to lose earnest money. I don't know if I've ever seen, I don't think any of my clients have ever lost earnest money for any reason. So I think that you can write offers that are spiritually committed to close from day one and still protect your client and preserve their earnest money no matter what. I'm speaking a little bit abstractly, but does this make sense?
Yeah.
Does this make sense what I'm saying? Let's talk about this in a little bit more concrete way. So I talked about how you can represent a client where you take them shopping without a buyer's rep agreement, without a pre-approval letter, with no ability to write an offer. I've talked to you about how this is not just a waste of your time, but also a spiritually damaging thing that you can do for someone to go get them to fall in love with something that they may or may not be able to afford, or to dangle it in front of them. And, it's going to take you a couple of days potentially to go get a pre-approval letter, and, they lose it. So let's talk about how that impacts lending, because your pre-approval letter, there is a qualitative difference in pre-approval letters that accompany your purchase agreement, that accompany your offer, right? And I believe in going the extra mile in every aspect of what I do to overwhelm the people that I do business with value and service, so that when they walk away from it with me, they say things like, I don't know exactly what it was that Nick or the Black Swan team did, but things just worked out. And one of those ways is being very critical thinking about lending. So there are loan officers, loan originators in our community where I know that they are aggressive and they tend to overpromise and underdeliver, for the same reason that agents do the same, where they take someone shopping and show them a home they can't afford. So, someone is talking to a few different banks asking for, the highest pre-approval amount or the lowest rate or something like that. And that loan originator knows that it is a competitive sales presentation, and they're gonna promise them the moon and the stars, and then they need to reel that back in. And when they reel that back in, that's happening while we're under contract. And that has a huge impact on whether or not we can close, has a huge impact on your reputation. I've had clients who have come to me with a pre-approval letter, and I say, gosh, I'm so glad that you have your ducks in a row, that you already have a pre-approval letter. And I've worked with this loan originator before. They're fantastic. I love working with them. I do want to let you know that, I have seen a couple contracts with them that have fallen through. I don't know why, just that's something I've seen before. Would you be comfortable and maybe, talking to a different loan originator just to get a second opinion and see what other options might be out there? So I'll just mention Sally Turner, for example. She's my go-to lender. She's an absolute just rock star, and she's very conservative. So I had a client last week. It's a client for a member of my team, and we got this buyer in touch with Sally, and Sally ran their credit and verified their income and everything, and said, okay, this is a person that I'm certain I can get them across the finish line, but it's going to be tough. And we're going to have to underwrite on a per deal basis, on a per property basis. I cannot in good faith give them a blanket pre-approval letter that they're authorized up to this amount for any home purchase. She cannot in good faith do that. And it was a low pre-approval amount. We work with first-time home buyers. a lot. That's something that spiritually is very important to me. It's not, very juicy commissions or anything, but these people are very easy to serve. They're very easy to please. And I just think it's the best thing about doing this job is helping someone buy their first home when other people can't or won't. And so they're pre-approved for like $140,000. It's hard to buy anything in this area for $140,000. And we're going to have to get a pre-approval letter on a per property basis. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to get this offer through. It's going to be hard to get this offer to close. But Sally tells me she knows that we can close. We just have to be careful about it. So this client writes a couple of offers with a member of my team and just gets frustrated that they're not hearing what they want to hear, that they're not pre-approved for more, and they go get a pre-approval letter from a different lender. And that pre-approval letter is for $170,000, and it doesn't need to underwrite on a per property basis. And we can go shopping for so many more homes this way, and we can move faster and stuff. And the member of my team representing this client, I tell them, you can do that, but it might be a waste of everyone's time, because if Sally tells me that this person, it's going to be a stretch and they need to stay under 140, maybe they can get across the finish line at 170, but maybe not, probably not. And this other loan originator, the client went and told them, we really want to see a pre-approval at 170. We think we can get a loan for 170. This other loan originator who is maybe doesn't value their time as much or is willing to be more risky or aggressive, wrote them that pre-approval letter for the higher amount, for the amount that they wanted to see on the pre-approval letter. And that reflects poorly on that lender's reputation, but it also reflects poorly on your representation and the quality of your offers and the quality of the clients that you represent. And so we had to have a really hard conversation with this client to say, listen, we can use this other pre-approval letter. And I bet you've done a good job finding a different loan originator, but we don't know if we'll get across the finish line. And they really want to do an inspection. So they're going to have to pay for inspection. They're going to have to pay for appraisal, and they may lose their earnest money, and they could lose all these pursuit costs just because you backed a horse that was kind of shaky.
So I have a question regarding you saying that. I know, like you said, you've been an investor and everything, so you know about lenders and stuff. So my thing is, being a new agent, how do I know? Can I read? Like, to me, if they come with the pre-approval letter, great. Let's write up a contract and stuff. But the thing is, how can I know if it's actually good? Or I don't want to question, like, say a client comes in, yep, I'm already pre-approved, let's go start house hunting, let's do a contract and stuff. How do I know as an agent, being that I'm new, which lenders are the reputable ones? Which ones are the ones that actually, like you said, instead of 140, they're giving them extra, and it's not a waste of my time.
That's right.
And I don't want to make the client feel bad because they got misrepresented from the lender. So how do you go about reading that part? How do you go about understanding which lenders are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones? I know Sally's great, but I don't know anyone else besides Keller Williams Mortgage.